the final result is a postbiotic product, but coming from a symbiotic origin. This is really the key and the highlight of this interesting cosmetic product that we get at the end.
Ecopsychology is a new concept that, well, it's really a new science that appeared as a way of manifesting scientifically what we already knew, which is that humans need nature to be healthy and to be mentally balanced. It is thanks to the synergistic effect that we have these kind of new ingredients that we call ecosystem ingredients, because they are truly like an ecosystem and they have the intelligence of the whole ecosystem. And that's why we said Triplobiome and not Tribiome. You know, it's not three kingdoms, it's the synergistic effect of the three kingdoms together.
So we have, let's say, in terms of barrier care, a holistic approach. We are going from the microbiome, the stratum corneum, also the keratinocytes that are protected from this oxidative stress of the pollution, and also at the dermal level, the extracellular matrix that I was mentioning, we also see this well-aging power of the ingredients.
Welcome to Provitalks 2.0. A new season of Provitalks, where the complete value chain process of a natural ingredient will be unraveled through Provital's expertise. Get ready for a journey where innovation and authenticity intertwine to inspire you.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of Provitalks 2.0. In today's conversation, we'll try to materialize everything that we've been talking about in previous episodes, and we'll gather everything that we have been talking with our amazing previous guests, and thanks to our repeating guest, Dr. Silvia Benito.
Welcome back, Silvia. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hi again, and thank you for inviting me back.
Well, second time, and Clara, I think it won't be the last, right? It's probably the face that we will be seeing here very, very often.
It's
hopefully.
My pleasure. It's a pleasure.
That's great. For anyone who doesn't know who she is, you have to go back to our 5th episode, right?
Yes.
Where we interview Dr. Silvia Benito together with Dr. David Manzano, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so as Clara was saying, today I think that we have the perfect example to help a little bit our audience to understand what we do in Provital, right? I mean, when we talk about sustainability, different sources for raw material, scientific innovation, efficacy tests, right? And well, everything what we do to help our customers to be successful in the cosmetics market.
Yes, everything that is part of this journey of development of a new cosmetic ingredient.
Definitely. So I'm really happy to talk indeed about this very recent launch that it's named Shiloxome, this ingredient that we launched this 2024. And indeed, I think it's a great example because it has many reasons behind to be a revolutionary ingredient.
Yes. First of all, it's everyone's favorite during this season. When we asked about favorite,
we've been hearing Shiloxome a while, yeah.
That's great, and I think it has many reasons, great reasons behind. Me, I would highlight three top keys. I would say, going from the origin, then the development, and then the efficacy as well. Mm-hmm. So these are key parts, as you said, of this journey of creating an active ingredient.
Yeah, that's true.
And yeah, if you want, I can go a little bit into detail of these 3 clues.
Please.
I think, well, the origin, first of all, this ingredient brings a completely new concept. So these are plant endophytes that we can explain later a bit more into detail. But just a tiny spoiler alert, we will be talking about plant microbiota. So plants also have their own microbiome, which is a super interesting topic. Then a second key of this ingredient would be the development itself. This is a biotechnological development. So indeed, because it's been through biotechnology, it's one of these developments that requires a lot of resources, a lot of investment, economic, but also time and people, a lot of people behind this development.
But at the same time, less resources in terms of natural resources, right? That's
definitely. So resources, I mean, in terms of setting up all the different biotech lines of research, and it requires research, a lot of research in that sense. But indeed, it has, since it's biotechnological, it has so many benefits, from the traceability and the quality standards of the product, but also sustainability, so that we can later dive into as well. So indeed, in that sense, it does not require the amount of resources such as land or water as other ingredients.
One of the main benefits.
Exactly. And then the last one that I was mentioning, the efficacy, for me, well, the efficacy of this ingredient, I think it's a super solid and robust efficacy in terms of all the experimental part that it has behind. It goes from the in vitro to the in vivo. We have a wide range of molecular technologies that we have applied thanks to our in-house in vitro laboratory, and also the bioinformatics and imaging platform that we have at Provital. And thanks to all these different omics, we perform transcriptomics, metagenomics, lipidomics. We will be talking about all these. But to give a summary, these technologies are the leading technologies, the most advanced techniques to really understand what is going on in a living organism in terms of biological molecules. And so, in other words, in Provital, we can understand and we can know, molecularly speaking, what is going on in the skin when we apply an active ingredient. So me as a scientist, I find this absolutely fascinating. And also the biotechnological production, being able to exploit the power of these endophytes, of this plant microbiota, and be able to create a cosmetic product that has these benefits, I find it really, really interesting. So
it's definitely a novelty for the industry, for sure. And you've mentioned a lot of different concepts that we want to get into more detail. But let's start with the beginning. So the origin. What are the endophytes? Can you explain a little bit more for our audience to understand what endophytes are, please?
Sure. So plant endophytes, indeed, they are part of the natural world. They are part of the plant world because they are, let's say, one invisible part of this plant world. We will get into that. Invisible to the eye, they are at the microscopic level. And indeed, in plants is where Provital put the focus since its origin. And we know that plants have been used widely and for thousands and thousands of years since ancient times for many different benefits for humans. And I can put some curious examples. You can take, for instance, the olibanum, that it's a resin that was isolated from a tree, from the Boswellia sacra tree. And when you burn this olibanum, you get perfuming purposes, most commonly known nowadays as incense. And we still use these products, right, extracted from plants. You can also see a very good example as well, the indigo dye, which is a dye extracted from a flower, from the Indigofera tinctoria flower. And this was used from ancient times, but we keep using it nowadays for dyeing the jeans that we normally wear.
Super common.
So really, really common. Another product coming from the plant world. And many more, also for cosmetic applications. The very famous Atropa belladonna plant. This plant was used, again, from ancient times for medicinal, even poison purposes. And for cosmetic purposes, women in the Renaissance used this plant for dilating the pupils to make their eyes look bigger. So it has, this kind of effects. And these effects, even if humans had understood that plants could bring these many benefits, it was not until very recently that we discovered what was really the reason, how could we justify these effects. And this was discovered almost 200 years ago and it was revealed that these effects were thanks to a chemical base that is plant metabolites. So this is really, the point of the activity that then we can see, right?
Yeah. And here's where Provital gets in, right? With this plant metabolite activity and all these science around it.
Exactly. And as you know, at Provital, we combine natural products with scientific advancements. And it is thanks to science that we can move forward and go deeper and go further and forward, like, let's say, more than the plant world itself. Because since I was saying these endophytes are part of this plant world, and indeed these plant metabolites, sometimes it's difficult to have access to them because they can be expressed in very tiny amounts by the plants, or they can even be expressed in a very specific tissue of the plant, or even in a time window of the embryonic development of this tissue. Or even they can be subjected to different environmental conditions. So it's really hard, let's say, to get big pools of these plant metabolites, cultivating them, let's say, in traditional ways, right?
Yes.
And here biotechnology brings a great tool in order to have access to these metabolites in a more systematic way in the laboratory. We can overcome many of these limitations, right? And indeed, this ingredient, the Shiloxome, is a perfect example of how we went further. We looked deeper into nature, and we found these symbiotic microorganisms. So these endophytes, I bring back the word from an etymological point of view, from the Greek. Endo means inside, and phyte means plant. So endophyte literally means inside the plant. And we found this, super nice concept, the symbiotic relationships that are established between plants and these microorganisms. You can get a parallelism for the audience and for everyone to understand better what these endophytes are. The same way we have the human microbiome, the microorganisms living in our mouth, in our gut, in our skin. This symbiosis of these microorganisms with ourselves help us to cope with many different functions. So they help us as a first barrier against pathogens, against other bad microorganisms, let's say, that can lead to diseases or infections. But not only that, the microbiome, our human microbiome, help us with nutrient acquisition to produce vitamins at many different levels, right? And for plants, it's the same way. They, thanks to the coevolution and the way the life has co-evolved, we establish relations among different organisms, and they also present these microorganisms all over the tissues. So you can find this microbiota in the roots, in the stem, in the leaves, in the flowers of the plants. And they help plants at many different levels, going as well from promoting plant growth, also as a barrier against pathogens as well. And very important, they help, it has been studied, there's a lot of research showing how these plant endophytes help plants to cope with abiotic stresses. This means UV radiation, for instance, or extreme temperatures, or extreme conditions such as drought, the lack of water, or salinity, or heavy metals. So at many, many different levels.
Yeah.
And here, we saw a huge potential of these microorganisms because indeed they can help plants to cope with these different stresses because they synthesize these plant metabolites that we were referring to before. Okay. So here we have a wide, range, an open future, an open horizon for investigating these plant endophytes. Many of them have not been discovered yet. To see as well which metabolites they produce, which are very interesting. We can go later into more detail. And indeed, to exploit this as a bio tool to produce new cosmetic ingredients.
Wow.
Yes.
just wow. I mean, this concept is incredible. So for what you are saying, each different tissue of the plant has its own microbiome, and I assume that then each plant has a different microbiome because it depends on the conditions, right? So I assume that there is a whole world to discover there, right?
Completely. And well, as nature itself, nothing is black or white, let's say. There is thousands of grays, and you can find common microorganisms among different plants, but also very exclusive microorganisms of certain plants or certain tissues within the plants. And this is a very hot topic. I mean, hot research, still many things to discover, to understand. It is known that there is, on average, from tens to hundreds of plant endophytes per plant.
Different species, you mean?
Different species.
Wow.
Yeah. And since there are around 350,000 plant species discovered up to date, this would mean that there are millions of these endophytes of different species. And as I said, most of them are not discovered yet. So it's really a new door for research and for new discoveries.
And that is why Provital has entered this new source and new, right, with the Triplobiome platform and everything.
Exactly. I mean, there's a huge potential here. We are talking as well as, of a symbiosis between two different kingdoms. So we have the plant world, the plant kingdom, and the microorganism itself that could be bacteria or yeast.
Okay.
So from the bacteria world or the yeasts that are from the fungi kingdom, we have what we call, but it is an interkingdom symbiosis. We have a symbiotic relationship of organisms coming from different kingdoms. And this interkingdom symbiosis, these benefits that the plant endophyte is bringing to the plant through these metabolites, we can exploit it and apply it to our skin for the care of our skin. So indeed, we have a fusion of three worlds, let's say here, right? The microorganisms, the plant endophytes, the plants, and ourselves, our skin.
And at a practical level, how are we able to do this? I mean, in the lab, in a lab scale, you know?
Mm-hmm. So indeed, the novelty here, right, is that not only we have brought a new concept into the cosmetic sector. We have to say these plant endophytes have been as well used for medicinal purposes since many years ago, since they were discovered. Also in the agro sector, they are used. And in cosmetics, we are one of the first companies indeed to bring ingredients produced by this plant microbiota. And we not only wanted to bring an ingredient coming from this, but to really establish and implement a platform, a biotechnological platform. That in other words, what it is the tool itself to isolate and produce these ingredients. But in other words, what we created is an endophytic library. So we have isolated over hundreds of different species of these endophytes that can be potential future cosmetic products. So if you want, I can detail the steps, step by step, how we create
Yeah, I think it would be interesting.
These active ingredients. We first need to take the plant of interest. So we have a collection of aromatic and medicinal plants from the Mediterranean area.
Okay.
Then you take this plant, you sample it on these different tissues that I was mentioning. So you have the leaves, the stem, the roots. Very importantly, you need to sterilize the surface of these different plant tissues because we want to make sure that we are isolating, we are getting the microorganism from inside the tissue,
not
the
external
plant tissue.
Ones that...
Exactly, that also live because you have microorganisms as well in the soil, right? But we really want the ones that are establishing the symbiosis with the plant cells. So for that, we sterilize the surface of this plant tissue, this vegetal tissue, and then we isolate, we extract the microorganisms from inside. Very importantly here, of course, we make a sequencing step to identify the genera and the species that we have in our hands. And then we cryopreserve these species, these different species. We have a cryobank in which, this is our endophytic library. And let's say that up to here, you don't need to repeat that never again. You don't need to go back to the plant because now you have in the cryobank your different species cryopreserved. And now you can only go back to there. You have here millions of copies of these endophytic cells. And then for continuing the development, you just go there, you can thaw the endophyte of interest and you start growing it.
Okay.
So again, here to emphasize why we are not overexploiting plant species and we don't need resources such as the land and water needed to cultivate the plants, because with one sample of plant, you have thousands of copies of the endophytes. And then after this, creating this library, this bank that we have cryopreserved, you take the copy of interest and you start growing it. We do a first small, medium scale growth of this endophyte of interest. And once it is with the appropriate conditions and all, and it starts growing, we move it into an industrial fermenter in order to produce larger quantities, industrial quantities of it. Then, of course, this is a microorganism, either a bacteria or a yeast. So fermentation is occurring while this microorganism is growing. And once we have already grow this, of course, the temperature and the pH, everything is under control. Then we have the biomass produced by this endophyte, and then we do the lysis. So very important, we lyse this biomass and we get a postbiotic. So the final result is a postbiotic product, but coming from a symbiotic origin. Yes. This is really the key and the highlight of this interesting cosmetic product that we get at the end.
I would like also to talk about another concept that is related with Shiloxome, of course, and it comes after the production. And I think it's something that you really do in the marketing department, right? And is more related maybe with the concept about the interkingdom symbiosis that Silvia was mentioning, and also the Triplobiome concept. So I don't know if maybe, well, I think you're the perfect one to explain this part.
Yes, I would love to actually, because it's like my favorite part of the marketing job in this side of the industry, which is the conceptualization of the science behind the product, right? And here, what we had from the science team, from the R&D team, was that the beauty and the essence of this product had to be these endophytic relationships between plants and their plant microbiota. So, well, that was the base that we had. Yeah. And what we did was we looked at the consumer and what the consumer would understand of this, right? Because it was very innovative, but it was too innovative that the challenge here was, again, to translate that innovation, maintaining this sciencey storytelling, but still being understandable for the final consumer. So the thing is, the market now, what we saw in the consumer is that there's a clear boost in the nature seeker consumer. What does that mean? We saw that from other industries. We saw that there was an increase in gardening, like people were buying plants for themselves. You know, there's hundreds of memes around the millennial generation buying plants. It's true. And then there was like there was a boost also in the ecotourism kind of tourism. You know, people prefer to see different landscapes now than cities, and, you know, having a different approach to what tourism was, more inclined towards nature. And, well, that already told us that the consumer was there. So what that developed into in the healthcare industry is the appearance of new movements, of new healthcare concepts that are related to nature. One of them is ecopsychology. Ecopsychology is a new concept that, well, it's really a new science that appeared as a way of manifesting scientifically what we already knew, which is that humans need nature to be healthy and to be mentally balanced. So, yeah, it's true. We already know that from many customs or heritage For example, the Japanese have this forest bathing custom where they mainly say that you need to be surrounded by nature to be healthy. And what ecopsychology has done is to put a set of observational and experimental experiments and science to support and to give reasoning, to give scientific reasoning to those theories. So we took that ecopsychological trend and tried to develop a concept that was like an ecopsychological solution. What do we have? We have an ingredient that is extracted from this millennial and or centenary interchange of information between plants and microbiome and their microbiome. So we take that intelligence generated in the plant and we put it in the skin. So we are kind of bringing nature in the skin. And that is the concept that we wanted to transfer. Not the Triplobiome platform is not only an endophytic library, which yes, it is, and it's great, but also it is a new way to experience nature through a cosmetic ingredient. And well, if you were wondering why the Triplobiome name, right? Why Triplobiome? The thing is, we needed to make it understandable for the final consumer. Hence the biome part. Everyone now in the cosmetics industry is all about the microbiome.
Yeah, it's a very well-known concept nowadays.
Exactly. And that is very related to the endophytes because it's the plant microbiome. But it's not only that. We wanted to transfer these potentialized intelligence that was created through the symbiotic relationship between the microbiome and the plant. So we added this triplo part because it is thanks to the synergistic effect that we have these kind of new ingredients that we call ecosystem ingredients, because they are truly like an ecosystem and they have the intelligence of the whole ecosystem. And that's why we said triplobiome and not tribiome. You know, it's not three kingdoms. It's the synergistic effect of the three kingdoms together.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, a lot of conceptualization parts behind.
I really love
that.
it. There's a lot of thinking and doing behind just the word, right? I mean, just the concept, but wow, a lot of work for sure. And you also mentioned before that, well, in Provital, we also have different biotechnologies to obtain our products, our active ingredients. So, for instance, we have the stem cells line and also the classical ferments. So, if we wanted to compare this Triplobiome platform with these other biotechnologies, what would you say are the similarities or maybe the advantages that the Triplobiome platform offers?
Yeah, so indeed, as any other biotechnology, there are many advantages that are in common with products that we have in our portfolio coming from plant stem cells or other microorganisms. So indeed, regarding, for instance, the traceability of the product itself, the production, the quality standards, the not depending on seasonal changes, all these advantages are common to any biotechnological development. Then as well regarding sustainability, so indeed, we from a small sample, as I mentioned, of plant tissue or a microorganism, you are able to produce large industrial quantities without the need of big amounts of plant biomass. So you don't overexploit a species. You preserve biodiversity, and you also reduce residues because you are no longer needing these bigger amounts of plant biomass. So all this would be common of plant endophytes and any other biotechnological development. But then we have some details, I mean some keys that are unique of these plant endophytes. And I would highlight as well three keys here of this uniqueness. One would be the origin itself. So we're talking again about a symbiotic microorganism. It's not any microorganism that you can find in the soil or in the sea, which they are also, potential good microorganisms for future developments. But here, with plant endophytes, we are really talking about microorganisms that established thousands and thousands of years ago a connection, a relationship with a plant, and that have helped these plants as well to survive and to cope with many different stresses. So precisely because of that, this leads me to my second key, which is the microbiome power. We are talking about a microorganism that has a big power, a microorganism that is a live organism that is able indeed to adapt and to help these plants to cope with many of these stresses that I was mentioning before. And because of this symbiosis, this connection, and this adaptability of the microorganism, biologically speaking and evolutionary speaking, they have been able to produce these metabolites that I was telling you about, not only microbial metabolites that they produce because of their own nature, but also they are able to produce very similar or even the same plant metabolites as the host. So this is something really intriguing, because what we are saying here is that you can indeed have access and produce plant metabolites without the need of the plant, just by using this symbiotic microorganism that has this capability of producing these plant metabolites. And this is unique of plant metabolites. No other microorganism is able to do this.
Of endophytes.
Plant endophytes, with all these words. And indeed, we saw here a huge potential to produce, indeed, to open a new door in beauty development.
Sure. First of them, Shiloxome. The first opportunity that we saw was Shiloxome. And maybe I think we could try to exemplify all this uniqueness, because I remember when we started presenting this new ingredient Shiloxome to the clients, the most common concern was, okay, what's the difference? What is this new biotechnology bringing to the table compared to other biotechnologies? And that's why it's great that you have explained it in these three clues, right? But for Shiloxome, I think it's like the perfect example to put into perspective these three clues, right?
Definitely, Clara. Yeah. So indeed, for Shiloxome, regarding the composition, right, of this ingredient. So here, again, I really want to emphasize on the fact that we have a very complex product. This is a complex mixture of different compounds, again, coming from microbial metabolites, plant metabolites. The nature of all this pool of metabolites that we get is quite complex. And indeed, at Provital, from the R&D department, we wanted to dig and to understand and to characterize what was the nature of this raw material that we were working on. So really on the ferment that we got from, I didn't mention, but this Shiloxome comes from a yeast. So a yeast that is in symbiosis with a tree, with the cork oak tree. And we really wanted to understand the ferment that we got.
It's the yeast from inside the bark of that cork oak.
Exactly.
I was going to ask, what's the tissue?
What's the tissue? It's the bark, and that is exactly the connection between the plant world and
the barrier function is very related with the origin of the same endophyte.
Exactly. As Clara pointed, this bark, it's the part of the tree that insulates this cork oak, and that it allows indeed this tree to live for many centuries. So it's a key part of this plant tissue to survive, indeed.
Yes.
And then we performed this preliminary metabolomics to understand the metabolites that we had on the raw material that we were using. And we found many interesting compounds, hydrosylated fatty acids. We found other compounds such as phenylactic acid, succinic acid. Many of these have been indeed reported to have antioxidation properties. So we were very intrigued by this. We also wanted to standardize the final product that we had in our hands, and here we standardized into metabolites in beta-glucan and xylitol for, as I said, quality purposes, and also to really indeed prove as well the well-aging activity that this ingredient had. Again, beta-glucan and xylitol also have been reported to have these moisturizing, anti-wrinkle, anti-pollution properties. And after this characterization of the composition, we of course performed the efficacy tests to really prove that this complex composition of the ingredient really could be translated into efficacy that could back up all these different, the complex nature of the product itself. And here, regarding the efficacy, as I said at the beginning, we did a wide and very, thorough analysis at different levels of the skin. So indeed, this compound had potentially, very intriguing properties regarding antioxidation, anti-pollution, and barrier function. So we focused here. We wanted to understand how this ingredient on the skin could protect against pollution, and also how it could boost our barrier function. And by many different techniques, we could prove this. So this is what, as a scientist, again, I really find really cool of this ingredient, that molecularly speaking, we can prove at many different levels how it acts on the skin. So we first did, from the in vitro point of view, we used primary human keratinocytes to indeed understand the effect of pollution on them and how the active ingredient could revert or could protect the cells from this. And we observed that at the oxidative level, so the reactive oxygen species that are normally produced when you have some air pollutants, we could observe that Shiloxome reverts this. And the same way for inflammatory genes. So all this was revealed by our in-house in vitro lab. And then we also performed, very interestingly, a transcriptomics using human fibroblasts. And here what we saw is that Shiloxome indeed activates the genetic program here. So by transcriptomics, we could reveal almost 400 genes that are regulated towards a better extracellular matrix. And the extracellular matrix, as many of you may know, it's a hub for skin regeneration and skin repair. So we could prove this thanks to this transcriptomics technique. And also at the protein level, we could see how the ingredient increased the levels of collagen and elastin, which are as well key markers of this extracellular matrix. And this was already super interesting. But
there's more.
But there's more. There's way more that it's on the in vivo part. So doing the clinical trial with volunteers. And here we continued with this omics. So apart from the transcriptomics, we performed 2 more omics, metagenomics and lipidomics.
And that's not very common to do in vivo trials, right?
Definitely. So doing this omics in vivo is a challenge, and it's something as well quite novel for the cosmetics sector. And we did this with this Shiloxome. So indeed, it has a multi-omics positioning. This metagenomics that I was mentioning, we performed it on the microbiome surface of the volunteers. So we took samples from the microbiome of the different volunteers, and we proved and we revealed that the microbiome diversity of the volunteers was preserved. And this is something really important because, as you know, the microbiome is the first barrier even before our own cells, and it's really key to protect ourselves, as we said previously, against pathogens and many other alterations. No? Also to highlight that these volunteers were participating, they were volunteers living in a highly polluted city. So we were studying and analyzing this activity of Shiloxome in this context. Okay, so it's really remarkable to see that it preserves well this microbiome balance of their skin. But there's even more, and this is really the cherry on the cake, let's say, because we performed a lipidomics. So we analyzed the lipids of the volunteers by taking strips, by the stripping method, taking layers of their stratum corneum, and we analyzed these lipids in vivo of the volunteers, and we compared what was going on with the lipids of the stratum corneum of the volunteers with the ones that had applied the active ingredient, the Shiloxome, and the placebo one, and we observed really striking changes. So we observed that the ones that had applied the ingredient, they had better lipids. Their lipids were longer. They had longer chains.
Yes.
And this is directly related with the hydrophobicity of these molecules of the lipids. The longer they are, the better the lipids, the better the packaging between all these lipids and these different cells that are part of the stratum corneum, the corneocytes. So indeed, we revealed a very interesting result, that is that this Shiloxome improves the barrier function of the volunteers when they apply it to the skin. And not only that, but the microbiome, as I said, is also well preserved. So we have, let's say, in terms of barrier care, a holistic approach. We are going from the microbiome, the stratum corneum, also the keratinocytes that are protected from this oxidative stress of the pollution, and also at the dermal level, the extracellular matrix that I was mentioning, we also see this well-aging power of the ingredient. So we have a really, as you can see, ingredient that is acting exactly at the many different levels of the skin.
And the relationship between between the layers, right? Because one of the things that I remember from the lipidomic study is the peroxidation part, where the R&D team saw how the less oxidation of the lipids you have, the longer the chains could become. We were helping with that anti-pollution side of the ingredient to elongate the lipid chain. So that was already better for the brick and mortar function that you were mentioning of the
Definitely, yeah. This is a very interesting hypothesis that we are releasing there. So how by preventing, let's say, this oxidation of the lipids, we see these longer chains. So we are working on a scientific manuscript for that, and hopefully very soon we will be sharing that with the scientific community.
Well, it makes sense, because what's behind the Shiloxome development is incredible. I would like to know, you mentioned that, well, this is already in the market, so of course we have some feedback from our customers, but I don't know, what is the industry saying about this novelty? Do you have any kind of feedback, maybe more of a scientific way rather than a commercial way?
Actually, yes. I mean, I'm super happy to have been in many of these events and like presenting the scientific data behind the active and receiving so many positive comments and great feedback. So I have to say that many of them were very intrigued, and they really loved the concept of the endophyte itself. So really this platform that we launched for the first time, and the library, they were very interested beyond this first active ingredient as well. So they were very interested in knowing which future developments we are doing with these endophytic strains. But then regarding Shiloxome as well, they were super intrigued and they really loved the product. But I have to say that most of the eyes went onto the lipidomics.
Yeah,
so
it's a star.
The lipidomics was really, I mean, it's a really well done study. It's very novel. It opens as well, many possibilities. We discovered as well different species, new species of lipids. That's why I mentioned that we are working on a scientific manuscript, because it's also a topic that it's still in exploration and many things to still discover. But indeed, many of them loved the results, seeing that with this active ingredient, we boost and we improve the lipids of our own stratum corneum, in the in vivo volunteers, these results that we showed. And then we received also many awards this year regarding the novelty of the ingredient. So we were shortlisted in Cosmetics, the last in Cosmetics in Paris for best innovation ingredient. Then we received an award at the International Conference for Cosmetics Innovation in China, the Benchmark Award. And we also received at the New York Suppliers Day the Maverick Award, which was very significant because this was independent of the organization. These were scientific influencers that were moving around asking questions and all, and they voted Shiloxome as one of the ingredients showing very cool scientific advancements. So all this, I think, it really proves that the new concept that we are bringing with the endophytes, and also that this ingredient, the first one coming out from this platform, indeed has great potential.
First but not least, right?
Exactly.
There's more coming.
There's
this
more
is something
coming.
we can already say, right? That we're gonna use this Triplobiome platform as a standard of Provital's innovation in a scientific way to keep creating these new products for the cosmetics using the endophytes.
Yes, there are 2 more products under development right now.
Wow.
I can only say that from the R&D. I cannot tell you
They never
more,
want to tell us anything.
No, but they are
anything new.
They are very promising
Yes.
ingredients. The second one has great results, so we're very excited to
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's why I was saying at the beginning that you will have to come back.
Yes. I would love to. Yeah,
And I think you've missed one of the recognitions for Shiloxome, which I believe is a great recognition already. That is the fact that you'll be presenting on a podium presentation the lipidomic study in the next IFCC Congress in Brazil, right?
Yes, I forgot to mention. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know when this will be released. Maybe it will already happen, but
around that, right?
But from the time we are talking now, exactly in 1 month, we are super happy that it was selected for Podium Talk. So we will be there at Iguazu presenting these interesting results from Shiloxome. Yeah.
Just we're finishing, but I would like to also know how is the go-to-market approach from maybe it's more from marketing. Can you say something about the market as the final product?
Yes, and indeed this product that she's been explaining and all the efficacy tests that are behind this Shiloxome put this product in a great position for marketing for market applications, for final product applications, and indeed we give this kind of examples of applications when we present this product commercially. And for the ones who want to know more, there is a podcast about what I'm going to explain now with Ana Balaguer, our Global Beauty Trends Manager, in which we talk about these different applications for Shiloxome and the market around barrier care and biotechnology. So, to sum up a little bit about these applications, the thing is, Shiloxome enters the market in a situation where barrier care is the trend, like for cosmetic product development is the trend, this barrier care, and there are micro trends associated to it, like the slugging, the micro slugging, and all that is getting very famous consumer-wise. And that is why we presented Shiloxome as a way to explain a little bit better what is barrier care and what is the relationship between the lipids and the lipid care and the anti-aging side of a product. So really to educate the consumer on this barrier care, Shiloxome presents itself as the perfect ingredient to do so, and obviously to activate that barrier. but also in terms of the metagenomic analysis that you mentioned and that prevention of the and maintenance of the microbiome diversity, that could also bring or be inside the conversation of diversity. Because or inclusion, you can say that Shiloxome is the perfect ingredient to maintain that diversity in the microbiome and to put that into the inclusivity conversation, which is huge, and there are many launches around that. Annabelle talks about it all the time. And also with the lab-grown part or the biotechnological side of this ingredient, and the fact that it has a concept, a very well thought or at least a thought concept around this biotechnological obtention, it is a way also to educate maybe the consumer on what is what are the advantages of biotechnology and the fact that you are obtaining it on the lab, and this ecosystem ingredient and these symbiotic relationships. That is something that can be perceived by the final consumer. So it can be a great storytelling and a way to explain the science behind. And last but not least, there's the ecopsychological side.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that.
Yes, the ecopsychological side is also very, very juicy for the final consumer, because you can make a formula that is an ecopsychological solution by itself, right? You can add obviously Shiloxome for the nature bringing side of the product. But you can make a formula that emulates, that has an aroma that is similar to a forest. So really create a formula that emanates nature, right? With its scent, with its texture, with its appearance, and everything that accompanies the ingredient that is bringing nature already. You can accompany it with a texture and with a formulation that really translate that concept that we know the consumers is looking for.
Yeah. Well, super interesting tips. I have to say congratulations both to the R&D team, to the marketing team, because the work behind this product is amazing. You just mentioned a little bit, but this means years and hours and a lot of people behind. So yeah, I'm really amazed by the result. And I think the market will be too. We already have some sales of these products. So, I mean, just in a few months, customers are already very interested in the product.
Yes.
And some are even already doing products with it.
Yes, and asking for selling that product in just them in their country in exclusivity.
I mean,
yeah,
that's big talk.
A lot of interest, yeah.
Well, thank you both for this time. I mean, I hope that the audience can now understand a little bit more about the whole process to create an active ingredient. This is for sure maybe one of the most complex ones that we have created. And of course, it's a perfect example. Well, thank you again.
Thank you. And thank you, Silvia.
It's a pleasure always to be here.
Yes.
And talk about science.
Yes, you bring science in here. Thank you to our audience for being listening to us. And remember to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Spotify, or to visit our ProviTalks page.
Thank you for watching and listening to ProviTalks. We hope you got some source of inspiration to create your own kind of beauty. If you don't want to miss our next expert interview, subscribe to our channel and don't hesitate to contact us at weareprovital.com. Provital. Do care.